Happy Mars Day, Collective. Hope everyone's doing well. I am making this video because I really didn't want to make this video. And, before I embarked on this channel meant to sort of share with whoever needs it out there my own journey, sort of in real time, of how to bloom in darkness, how to heal um, through the natural world, healing our relationships with one another, but first starting with ourselves, and how engaging with the natural world can um, often tether you and almost make you feel connected to back to yourself after experiencing loss or tragedy, um, or whatever struggle you might be going through. And um, of course, I've demonstrated the value of doing that, at least for me, through, working with foods, like foods that come from the ground, and talking about the planets and talking about the plants, and our connection with animals and all the living things, sort of demonstrating really over time the connectedness of everything, and how sometimes when you feel like you don't know what to take a stake in, and what if you are looking for something to feel like a reason to fall back in love with living with life, it's to connect with these natural things, like to and almost see yourself in them. And so when I first started this, I had joked to a lot of friends, and including my therapist. I remember saying something like, it was either brilliant or insane of me to attach my own healing journey to this creative endeavor, to this outward expression um, to the world, because it sort of didn't allow for me to mask. It didn't allow for me to, I guess, be out of alignment in terms of what I'm embarking to do. Sort of like that 10th house, that midheaven, that sort of I guess legacy that everyone seeks to build, what you want to be known for. Um, if you choose like just a job or some sort of career that has nothing to do with your own personal journey of healing and embodying what it is you set out to be in the world, it's it's easy, at least somewhat, to like sort of put on your mask and like show up to work, and this is where I go to establish my legacy, my reputation out in the world, and then I can come home and take my mask off, and I can suffer or struggle or dissociate or escape. And I think a lot of people find themselves their suffering is often like sprung from that, and that's often what we're socialized to do. And so I think somewhere subconsciously, a year ago, when I knew like what a journey I had in front of me, um, I think somewhere inside I was scared of giving up on myself in a lot of ways, but most importantly of sort of falling into a familiar pattern of like self-sacrifice and doing what I had to do to survive, instead of like seeing things like from a different angle, sort of um, leaning into the vulnerability of suffering and struggle, and using my gifts, that eighth house Mercury I've talked about, the fact that I often live in that sort of beneath the surface space of like deep emotion, and the sensitivity to collective emotions, how instead of like hiding that and running from it, or keeping it to myself, what if I sort of married the whole what I'm known for in the outside world with that sort of indispensable quality about myself. And there was no better way to do that than to sort of almost like heal in front of people, because there's nothing more vulnerable than that. There's, like I've said before, I'm not on the other side of anything. I'm still um, continuing through this very long journey that originated with like everything that I once knew falling apart a year ago. And it's really interesting how things can remind you, like no matter how far you've come, and like how much you feel like against all odds you've been able to find joy, you've been able to find some sort of happiness and excitement about the world, and your own life, beyond what you could have imagined when things fell apart. Um, it certainly doesn't shield you from more things falling apart. And sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it doesn't have to fall into the totally um, unpredictable category, the total Uranus category of something like that's sudden upheaval and like you didn't see it coming. But then in hindsight, I guess the writing might have been on the wall. And then sometimes things fall in that sort of middle category to where it's like, well, yes, if I'm totally detached from my life, looking from the outside, I suppose this upheaval, like to where one day things were one way and the next day nothing was the same. Um, it, I guess it is predictable, just like, with the death, you often see this like with the death of like, someone says their grandparent died, or someone, a family member who had cancer dies. And, if you just hear about it and you're totally detached, you just hear about somebody you don't know. Um, I think a way of like, when you hear that and you feel terrible and you think, God, I don't know what I would do. I think the brain immediately tries not to be cold, but like in terms of like kind of processing it yourself, thinking, man, if that were me, I don't know. You sort of search quickly for like, oh well, old people die. When you hear someone's grandparent dies, you're like, oh well, that's sad. And I know they were close to their grandparents, but like old people die, and that's true. And just like people with really advanced forms of cancer, they often die. We all sadly know the statistics, but it doesn't change the experience of that loss for the person who doesn't see themselves with that sort of that air of detachment, that sort of Aquarian detachment, um, that we often need. We need people that can see things in a detached way, um, detached from outcomes. For example, like a lot of counselors and healers, I don't think it would be feasible for them to do what they do without some sort of detachment, so that they can help lots of people through tragedy and grief and loss. So, um, I myself am always trying to maintain this level of detachment while still taking a stake in the world, and like loving things and not being afraid to like be emotionally vulnerable, um, while at the same time it seems sort of like paradoxically, um, trying my best to rationalize emotions, because subconsciously, as an Aquarius, um, you almost feel like if I can rationalize everything, it sort of like protects me. I don't want to become someone that like becomes so detached from my own life to where I'm not experiencing the joy, so that I can save myself from the sorrows. So that's like a very strange balance. Um, but it's one that I've always worked really hard at trying to perfect over time. So I guess if it's going to the nature of my own suffering the last year, as some of you might have known or seen in some of the origin story videos, this was all sort of born from like despair, this act of creativity and self-expression. And it was the kind of despair that came from finding out that someone that I was engaged to for 10 years and like shared life with for almost 20, shared two dogs with that we raised together. Finding out that person was having an affair with his assistant, and it wasn't just like sort of a one indiscretion here or there. It was like a year plus of like betrayal and like actively like establishing a whole other relationship, like way over a year before I discovered it. And then when I did discover it, everything falling down like the tower, everything. One day my life was one way, um, and then the next day it was like never the same again. And I knew at that point, and to be exact, that was February 5th, would have been Sunday, February 5th, 2023, to where that was like the night, the day that he left the house, and like as unbeknownst to me, even that day, like he never came back. And so I was left here in this house that we got together, like that, and all the like decorating and like I'm a very expressive like decorator, so everything was um, there were reminders everywhere of the life that was built with somebody. But the two, I guess, most the two loudest, most obvious reminders were the two dogs that we shared together. They were older dogs, so they were at that stage in their life to where, especially one of them who was blind and mobility impaired, like required a harness to be taken outside to potty like several times a day. You had to pick her up to bring her up and down the stairs every morning and night for going to bed and getting back up. Um, that was a lot of work for two people living here. And so I remember when he left, and at that time it wasn't even like clear. I didn't think he would just never be coming back. I I was already overwhelmed by like how am I gonna like not fall apart, and keep this household going, like keep keep everything going, keep the lights on, keep everything stable somewhat, and take care of these dogs all by myself. Like it was already hard with two people, and I was really scared about like my ability to do it alone while getting myself like healed and moving forward and surviving. Um, and so the whole journey has been long, over the last year. And in my last video where I talk about the parade of planets over Pluto, I mentioned towards the end that I was having my own series of thoughts and going through my own transformations, which has been true like all year. But like I had come to this sort of um, point to where I was looking back at those milestones and contemplating, where I was and like where I still had to go. And what had started happening when I last recorded that video, and it just escalated very quickly, is the dog that was not blind, um, the one that was, he was older, like Bear, the blind one. Mr. Jenks was his name, and he was like he never needed anything. Like the reason that I was able to manage the situation with the two dogs um, was because Mr. Jenks never needed anything, and he was just like, it was easy to forget that he was an older dog because he was just so like vivacious and spry, and he was always like he definitely took his role as the man of the house very seriously once their other parent left forever. you could just tell like he took care of me and his sissy bear, and he sort of like corralled us up. Every morning he'd be like running up and down the stairs as I was like getting myself together and putting the harness on Bear before I brought her downstairs. And the ritual of it all of us like on this sort of the lifeboat of this house where I managed to reframe the state of mind I had. Instead of looking at it as a tomb of an old life, I decided I would do that Venus and Capricorn thing and use my love that was expressed in my home everywhere and just take it back and report into me and my dogs, and like take pride in being like that steady um that captain that keeps the ship steady, just like a Venus and Capricorn would do for those things that they love. So I've always done. So I thought, I can handle this, and I did. And even though I knew at some point subconsciously, one of the biggest sources of anger, actually, that was really hard to grapple with when I discovered the betrayal and all that was even if I could get over the betrayal, like on the ego level of like being like done dirty like that, after all these years, and like knowing that I gave all my good energy, like that I would never do that to somebody, and I would find it, I guess, at least in me to treat somebody who I at least looked at as a best friend, to do dignity to the connection by like, even if I had to make a painful decision, take authority, that inner authority, and do the hard thing, and give something a dignified end, because the way you end things often tends to color, for better or worse, the whole nature of the thing's existence, if you've ever thought about it. Which is why it's important when, if you do fall out of love with somebody, or find yourself having outgrown like situations or jobs or anything, giving something a dignified end is not just for the people whose lives are affected by what you do, but it's for you. It's for, in order to really like grow and learn from your past experiences. It's going to be hard to become who you want to become if you always have to look back at something that preceded your new life or your new path, and never be able to change how you ended it. That's the really uncomfortable part about endings, is that it's important to get them right because you don't really get to go back and do it over. And so, when I got over that part, I don't even know what getting over really means, but when I could get past that part and just embrace the path ahead, and embrace like what I had been able to establish, the stability here at this house with me and the two dogs that now I'm the sole caretaker for. It was like a really big confidence builder to like see myself handling something that seemed just so impossible at the outset. Um, and around Christmas, I have to say, I had started to notice my older dog, the blind one, Bear. Sometimes on the videos you'll notice her like bumping around in the background, or you'll hear her bumping around in the background, because I just decided to let go at a certain point instead of trying to like keep her locked into a certain area downstairs. She wasn't gonna have that. She would just bust out somehow, and like, so I just figured, she's so old and like determined, and I'm not gonna do her like that at the end like stage of her life. So I just let her wander around, and I kept certain things like in certain places so she could have the downstairs mapped out, so she can maneuver around safely. And so I started to notice it around Christmas that she was in more of a state of confusion, like most of the time. Like, I always said like my gauge to know when I needed to take authority and like consider whether it was her time or not was the sort of joy factor. Like, did most days that were good outweigh the days that were bad? And um, it's hard because like you sort of like a relationship, you love something so much, and like you love what you have and what you've established, and like so sometimes it takes there's like this curve of like catching on to something that an objective detached version of you might could see. And to be clear, like there were a lot of people in my life, loved ones that like knew me and knew the dogs like their whole lives, and they could see stuff before me, of course, but they always were so like they commended like my ability to keep the balance around here and like give her a good quality of life, and her and Mr. Jenks. And the fact that she was on a very like specific med routine, like, and that I was able to give more of my life force to her um than most people would be able to. And same with the meds, like she was on a very like specific concoction of meds that weren't cheap, again something that was like a luxury to be able to do. And so because of all those things, like she had already far exceeded the timeline of what the average household would have been able to like offer for her. But that's what made it hard, is because there was now a different standard that I was going to have to pay attention to, which was subtle cues of like when an animal that is sort of held together with this delicate balance of meds, and you're being like a priority in the way your life is structured. You now have to look closer like at the cues of, is this animal having a good time, like is this animal in pain? And what was I started to notice when she walked around most of the time, like towards the end of last year, her tail would be in between her legs, like she wasn't just like wandering around having a good time. um it was like an apprehension that was like there all the time. But again, I'm thinking like, I don't want to see that. I'm like, well, she's walking around and she's eating and she's going to the bathroom. um but then it started being a thing to where like one day I gave her these like teeth cleaning treats that they both really loved, and they were even softer than like normal ones. And I was giving that to them one night, and she started like yelping because it was obviously hurting her to like chew it up. And like, but she loved food so much that she kept chewing, and she would continue like yelping out in pain as she chewed. And it was like heartbreaking because like the last thing I want to do was snatch the treat from her, but she loved food so much that she would keep yelping through it. Like, so in other words, the few things that like used to bring her pleasure in her delicate state were now associated with pain, and that was like heartbreaking. And so I was like, well, I'll weed out the nighttime snacks, and let's go from there. Well, come beginning of this year, it had started to carry over into like other treats, like just small cookies. And then it started to become to where she would be drinking water, and like she would like yelp out in pain. And so I started to realize like it was like, and like the way she drank water changed. She used to be a very loud, like messy water lapper upper, and it was like such a small delicate sound now at that point. And it told me that like it probably hurt. It was like her jaw, it was something about her jaw that was hurting, like moving her mouth was hurting her. And so fast forward to when I was making the last video. I barely remember. I want to say it was a week ago. Time has been very everything's felt very liminal in the last week. So um, the other dog, Mr. Jenks, I started to notice his appetite decreasing, and like he would be finicky sometimes. Sometimes like if he sensed stress, um, either with me or like if Bear was like having a harder time, that was something that would generally affect him. So a couple days, like 2 or 3 days, and sometimes he'll like just like find some animal droppings in the backyard and have an upset stomach for like 2 or 3 days. So that wasn't that weird. But then I started noticing like his right front paw turning inward like this, to where he would try to walk and like it would just turn the opposite way. Um, and then I started noticing that on his back foot, on the right side as well. And so I brought him into his vet like for comprehensive screening, and they troubleshoot the way that they do, taking tests, do blood tests, and um, so they were concerned. They had noticed he had lost some weight, and I explained, yeah, he he's been finicky about his food, and I guess it's harder to notice when your dog loses like 3 pounds when you see them every day. And I just thought, well, maybe just like these few days of like not eating a lot, he dropped weight really quickly because he's pretty like active like dog. So they sort of left me in this state of well, let's try to get him to eat. Go to people foods, like healthy people foods. If you got to cook some chicken tenders or just whatever he'll eat, that's like we'll give him nutrition. So I was bending over backwards, of course, going to the store and buy chicken tenders. And one day chicken tenders would be really exciting to him, and then like so I'd go and I'd make a whole batch, and then like 2 meals later he would just turn his nose up. He didn't want it. And so then I'd go to the store and I'd like get some really good high quality like hamburger patties, and I'd cook those up, and like he would eat it one meal, and then like you know turn his nose up at it the next day. And that was after some nights he would like spit stuff up like upstairs, like in bed. So it was like concerning, but I'm just like, don't want to jump to conclusions, but I'm starting to realize at this point, the mobility, he was having trouble navigating the stairs. And I thought, well, I don't know, the vets thought maybe him not eating as much is making him weak. And so they were like, we don't want to jump to conclusions about the feet doing that. Maybe it's just like him dragging his feet is sort of like a side effect of just weakness from not eating enough. So, we got some appetite stimulants going for meds, and I kept bending over backwards and scramble some eggs up in the morning, like every possible quality protein that I could just whip up that he might like, bone broth, whatever. And whatever I did would tend to work for like a day, and then the next day didn't want it. And so at this point, I had just started carrying him up and down the stairs too, because I didn't want to affect his confidence. And like I knew something was up when he, despite being very confident and not one to like shy away from a physical challenge, like when he would linger at the bottom of the stairs and clearly not want to go up, and he would do it for the outside stairs too, I just was really concerned. But I thought, well, while we're trying to figure out what's going on with him, I'm not going to like have him injure himself, and I want to keep his confidence up. So I just was like, well, I can carry Bear up and down the stairs. So I'll do the same for him, until we figure out what's going on, and like we get him all straightened away. But like the reality was that I felt immediately that additional it made everything doubly hard, in a way to where I started to have to be honest with myself about Bear. And I realized that Mr. Jenks deserved what had been given to Bear, which was like the accommodations, like through his new state of need. And so I had this really devastating process that I went through because, Bear was like my first baby. I got her when I was in law school and was going through a really difficult time. And I just realized, and I was like seeking the counsel of like other people who had gone through these experiences, and they sort of told me like, yeah, we know you love Bear, but like I'll be honest, when we put our dog down, he pretty much exhibited like the same behaviors Bear does. And if it's any consolation, don't feel bad about making the decision to give her like a peaceful departure before it actually gets bad. Like, because when a dog's that old, things can be steady, and then like they can get really bad really quick, and then it becomes like a traumatic, like sort of emergency thing, a call that you have to make to end their life, because the suffering will just be like really hard to watch. And so that really stuck with me, and I thought, I guess in my mind that's kind of what I was waiting for, because I didn't want to notice like the like yelping when eating and walking around with the tail in between her legs. And I just thought, she turned 16 this month. um and I just thought, I really need to take authority, because she relies on me. I'm the only authority. I have to make the call, and I have to make an uncomfortable decision to end something with dignity, because she deserves that. Like, and just because I don't want to make the call doesn't mean that the call doesn't need to be made. And I found myself in this really strange parallel of like, I really understanding what happened between me and my ex-fiance, and like where the hurt and anger came from, about like, realizing I could have handled starting a new life on my own, but like what can't ever be changed is the way that somebody just ended it that way. Like, took a year of having two worlds to benefit from. And so I realized in hindsight that it was like me being treated poorly and being like gaslit, and like him trying to pick fights with me and try to instigate me, like try to get me to be cruel back to him. I realized how that was like his coping mechanism. That was him trying to offset grief with anger, like so that he could feel good somehow about what he was doing, and maybe one day escalate it so badly to where I said something so terrible to where he'd be like, see, there you go, and then like end it. And therefore he could sort of like compartmentalize like the repeated acts of betrayal for like over a year, to the person that he, even upon his departure, called his best friend. Like, and that was what was really weird about it, is him saying, well, I haven't felt like you were more than a best friend for a long time. And that stuck with me because, well, as an Aquarius, you think, isn't that what like an ideal relationship is? And so that really stuck with me, and thinking like, how would you do your best friend like that? And so when I look at the dynamic of my relationship with the dogs, and like, my best friend, man's best friend, woman's best friend, it was that, but it was also like, they also rely on me to make certain calls. Like, so the authority that somebody knows, for example, when they don't love you anymore, that authority that only they can have, uh, they have to make an uncomfortable decision, and like do a thing that doesn't feel good, but gives a dignified end to like a relationship that had no reason to be, that could maybe one day by both parties be looked back on fondly. And I really started to see these parallels, and the dogs being my best friend, and best friends, and my sort of daily structure, like where they got me through. They made me get up and like try my best when it was hard to do it for myself, but I could see the value of like keeping it steady for them. And I realized that I had to take some authority in this situation, even though I had always imagined that there would be someone else here to like navigate these decisions with our old dogs. But the reality was, like, here I am a year later, and I had to invoke that mercurial energy to be rational, to go, listen, you know that there are no new circumstances here. Like, don't let what happened a year ago um, cloud the reality that you're faced with now. Like, part of like the devastation a year ago and over the course of last year was knowing no matter how much joy I could experience and how much momentum I built up last year, this time was always going to come. And but because it was so inextricably intertwined with like a person that's no longer here, it's been very hard to separate those emotions out. So I'd been working on doing that in the last video that I made, and I had reached out to like a vet that comes and like you know arranges for a peaceful passing of your pet at your home. And I thought, I already knew that that's what I would want to do for her. And I thought, well, I don't have to like arrange it right now, but I need to at least have this information and like start like contemplating it in my mind and like know how much it's going to cost and like all that. Because the reality was, now with this stuff popping up with Mr. Jenks, I was like, it's up to you. Like, you have to do what's right. He deserves your full attention because he needs it. And Bear has come to her time, and I knew it. Like, I knew it was the right call for her. But I also knew that because there was so much unknown with Mr. Jenks, well, I just needed to know that he was going to get all of my attention, and detach from the outcome as his caretaker. I needed to do that because I wasn't going to be able to think clearly if I didn't. I needed, in other words, I couldn't link sending Bear off to like the assumption that Mr. Jenks would be just fine, because those were two unrelated things. But the point was, it's not about having someone around for me, one of them around for me. It's about like, what is the best independent decision for each of these dogs? And so instead of feeling like I'm having to choose between the two, the reality was it was already the right decision for Bear. And Mr. Jenks clearly needed a lot more attention and like maybe was going to need a lot more daily care. And I was prepared to give that to him, like make whatever modifications. So, we were, I finally one day, like after a lot of kind of grieving and like then pulling it together and then consulting with people, I had already reached out to this vet and told her about the situation, including with Mr. Jenks, and how I just was like, I want to have a dignified ending. And she walked me through it and how, we could do it. And then afterwards, bring the other dog out to like when she was gone, so they knew that they were gone, because, they can tell. And that was not a thing I was looking forward to, but I was like, okay, I need to prepare myself for it and like take control and make it okay for both of them. And so I was reaching very deep, doing these things. And then on Saturday night, this past Saturday, Mr. Jenks, I had the appetite stimulants had started to work. And so I had found that he really liked, I gotten him to eat some hot dogs, and I found out that he'll eat, they're these Jimmy Dean egg bites. They're frozen, and like I'll eat them when I'm in a rush in the morning, like once a week or something. So they are both used to smelling it in the air and sort of looking at me like, oh, this is what Mama eats. I'd like some of that. And so I thought one day, well, this is like a good protein source. It's got like 20 grams of fat for both of them. I just thought if I could get him to eat these, that would be really handy and quick. And I was so excited one morning, like I heated a whole box, like which is two of them up, and like broke it into pieces, and like he ate it. And I was just like, oh great, like I'll clean them out of the freezer of every grocery store, and like this is what he'll eat. Until he gets better, this is what I'll buy. And so that had been working for like 2 or 3 days. And so uh, come Saturday night, I guess everything was pretty stable and stuff. He was like a little bit more lethargic and still having the paw string inward, but I had made the decision already. I'd made the call at the point of the end of last week, I guess it would have been, and arranged for Bear's peaceful passing, and that was supposed to be today at 1 o'clock. And I was trying to make it to where the weather was sunny and we could like do it outside. And I had just thought, okay, I'm gonna give everyone a really good weekend. We're gonna all have like really good treats, and that was like how I saw the weekend going. And that was already hard. But then Saturday night, just out of nowhere, for the first time in his life, we're all on the couch and Mr. Jenks is laying there and he just starts convulsing. Like I look over, and like I see like bubbles coming out of his mouth and he's just like having a seizure. And I was horrified. I was just like, it took me a minute to like process like what was going on, and I just broke down because he's never had a seizure in his life. And I just thought, oh my gosh, I was sure that it was all about to end right there, actually. And so I just like went over there and I held him, and I'm just like hysterical, actually. And so I call up my friends, neighbors down the street. One of them's a nurse, and I just like frantically called. I was probably barely like comprehensible, and just what I really was expecting was that by the time someone came over and just minutes later, that I would have a dog that had passed, and I wasn't coherent enough to know what to do, as strange as it sounds to say. And I just was sitting there just horrified holding him, and he started calming down, and he still looked alive, but again I still wasn't like sure if he was like gonna hang on. I didn't know. And so one of my friends came from down the street, and she's also like, she's a nurse and she works in like palliative care, so she at least with people, like she's seen people having seizures, and she's aware of like the stages afterwards of like how can have like a period of like weakness, disorientation, and then like knowing to look for things like labored breathing. And so she was a really good support, but also like objective sort of observer, and like kind of guiding me through decision making, or like. And she was like, so we can try to take him somewhere. And so I call up an after hours place and describe to them what's going on. And unfortunately for that situation, they don't consider an isolated seizure an emergency. It has to essentially be like 2 to 3 seizures in a 24-hour period before it's like the kind of thing they'll take in. And so they were just basically coaching me through like, yeah, there's going to be like an after shock period, I guess, to where the dog will seem disoriented, and they might try to like flail around, like, so keeping him like ideally in a crate or like somewhere protected to where he wouldn't hurt himself. And then to monitor him, and then like to call back if there was like more seizures within the next 24 hours. So I just thought, okay, well, I'll keep him stable, and we'll stay on the couch tonight because it wouldn't be safe to try to navigate the stairs with him in this state. And so my friend sat with us for a couple hours, and what was sad is like the aftershock period was really him like he'd be really disoriented, and he'd try to like jerk up on the couch and try to like frantically walk in some direction, but because his paws were turning inward, he couldn't even. He would like fall over, but he was still super determined, like move about, and like often he would just charge towards me and like follow my arms and like almost look up at me like help me, and I just used all my strength to keep calm, to because they rely on you for like that emotional sort of cue, especially him. And I was just like, I'm gonna muster everything I have, and I'm gonna I don't know if it's gonna be okay, but as far as he's concerned, it's gonna be okay. That's what I decided to channel. And whether I was gonna be okay was a whole other thing. So, spent the night on the couch Saturday, and that whole night was really just me staying up most of the night, watching him like exhaust himself from sort of aftershock period, and then he would like fall asleep for a little bit, and then he would jerk back up and like have labored breathing, and then I'd have to wake myself up if I was dozing off, and catch him, because it was like I really just had to try to grab him the whole time, to keep him from falling off the couch, and hurting himself. And so, meanwhile, the bear, I'm trying to keep things calm too, because she only has a couple of days left, as I had planned to have a really good like weekend for them both, and so I didn't want to. I didn't want to be all worked up and like have her last days here be in this like state of chaos. And but I was really panicking. I was like, there's literally not enough hands here to like. I was worried about just getting through the next several days, and I really was distraught, because I was like, here I am, like looking for some relief, and unfortunately, the closest relief on the horizon was Tuesday afternoon, where I would be sending one of my dogs off. And so it was like this most cursed existence that I could think of. And I just kept going with it. And so Sunday was fairly stable. I was just keeping things tidy, and like Bear, I'd put her on the floor for the night because she was just not wanting to stay on the couch to sleep. She didn't understand why we weren't going upstairs in bed and her getting tucked in like she always is. So I just had to put her on the floor and let her wander around. And because of that, she was extra confused. So she, like, that whole Saturday night, she was like wandering around and she would pee everywhere. And so I guess in that adrenaline fueled state, I wasn't sleeping anyways. I would just get up and like clean up whatever she messed up, and like just keep the laundry going, and keeping my eye on Mr. Jenks, and like running over to him when he was waking up and like started trying to jerk around. And so I was like, we just need to get through Sunday. We just need to get through Sunday, because the vet's not open. The normal vet's not going to be open until Monday morning. So the plan was, I'm going to bring him in first thing to his vet Monday morning. And it was a tight squeeze, because I was already really upset about the fact that Bear's last day on Earth would be me bringing Mr. Jenks back and forth to his vet. But like that was just going to be what was going to have to happen, and I was just going to have to be calm and like keep things steady, so that I could feel good about the way that the last day went. And then Sunday, Mr. Jinx had another seizure. It was Sunday night, and it seemed it just seemed to be worse than the first one, really. So same thing happened again, and I just was like, okay, we're gonna spend another night on the couch. And I was just like counting down the hours at that point to when his vet opened. But this time, like the after effect of the seizure, it looked like it took him longer to come to again. Like his eyes just started looking more vacant, and at that point, I really had to make a serious. I had another neighbor come who just happened that day to be like making dinner, and she was like, "I'm going to bring you dinner." And so when she came to deliver it, I asked if she would come in and kind of helped me make this assessment. And she's, she's older than me. She's like said goodbye to um, some pets in her life, and she also used to be a chaplain in a hospital for like 10 years, and she would help people navigate end of life decisions. And she came in and she just was watching me hold him, and like saw how like distressed his breathing was and like his state, and she did a really kind thing for me, seeing the situation. We're close enough to where there's like this objectivity, but like not her overstepping boundaries by offering this. And she was just like, I really think I think you need to put him down tonight. Like, I think that I have to be honest. Like, I've seen a lot of this. And she was like, this dog is like suffering a lot, and he's having trouble breathing. And given the combination of the other conditions that were just seeming to worsen, uh, it all was pointing to some neurological deterioration in some way, like a tumor or something. And when I started to be honest with like myself about what I saw, I just thought that the last thing I wanted to do was to maybe spend all day Monday bringing him in and out of like certain facilities, his vet, and then maybe somewhere else, knowing how much he hates that. And then only to maybe just several days later, after, I'd already in a state of chaos had to say goodbye to Bear, and have him lose her in the midst of all that treatment, just to be told what was obvious to anybody that was here to witness like the events of the days. I just thought, well, I think this is that inner authority that I'm needing to pull upon again. I'm needing to realize that like I have a vantage point that like the vets who have a series of like tests and order things that I understand they would need to like rule out, and by doing they have to go in a certain order, but things had already gotten way past that point like very quickly. And so I just made the decision to I contacted the vet um, that I'd already lined up for Bear, and I explained to her like this sort of change in circumstances. And I just asked, I was like, is there any way that you could come before Tuesday at 1? And at this point it's like Sunday evening. So um she was, of course, like really just uh devastated for me, as someone who does that for a living would be sensitive in that way. Of course, she was really compassionate. She's a great person for the job that she does. So she just kind of coached me through like she has like done two dogs before at a time, and she just kind of coached me through like the objective like reality of the situation, and how, because she's a vet, so she was at least able to offer insight based on what I was saying about Mr. Jenks, and how especially in an older dog, when you're having these seizures pop up for the first time, how there's like a certain series of things, a limited category of things that might be causing it. Like, has he been given some poisonous food or whatever? And it was things to where I was like easily able to rule out. And because otherwise it was like all pointing to like clearly like a tumor or some neurological thing that was not going to be, I guess the best case scenario, if money being no object, it's like, well, are we going to, if I'm offered the opportunity to have a brain surgery for this old dog, would I take it? No, I would not subject him to that. And so I was forced to like to make a decision. And I asked, if she could come out earlier. And she, because the way she has to go about two dogs at the same time, required a little bit more time. But like she was able to offer up coming out Monday morning. 10 a.m. And so that would have bumped Bear Bear to a day and a few hours earlier, um, just so she could go, so they could go together peacefully. Um, so that's what happened. And so I just wanted to share this because I I know that like it's tempting to get into the transits, which are it's like its own. That's a video for another time because I know it's hard to find comfort, but like I never fail to be amazed when I look and just see the ways that things, in my mind when I was looking at these transits, trying to rationalize and detach and protect my emotions, I saw it as like me having to make a decision about Bear and like taking authority and what that would mean. And so in my mind, I had comfortably already decided how some of these transits are going to play out in the context of my chart. But the universe has a way of reminding you, Uranus, Pluto, and Aquarius, and Uranus being the co ruler, along with Saturn, the ruler of time and inner authority, and taking the authority and making the right call, regardless, like standing on your own 2 feet and not looking for someone else to tell you what to do, has a way of reminding you that just when you think you can see how something's going to play out in your own life, um, it can manifest in a totally different way. Like, so the surprise for me was that I was saying goodbye to both of my dogs at the same time. And, I, of course, was, when I made the call and like, did what needed to be done and made arrangements as needed. And she, said, just confirm, I'll put you down for 10 a.m. tomorrow morning, but like, I'm going to check back with you at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning to like verify that that's where you still are and all that. And so, I had to make the decision like at around midnight that night, when I'd already made the decision, and I was like, I'm gonna find a state of calm, and I'm going to take control of this situation, and I'm going to use every skill set that I built over the last year, and I'm going to I'm going to see them off. Like, I'm going to make sure their last several hours are steered with a steady hand, and I'll worry about myself after that. But I knew that myself, in terms of how I could process things, would be entirely dependent upon what I did with those last several hours. And so while it's tempting to like break down and hold on to them and like make it about my own emotional release, that was not what that was not the environment that I was going to let them go out in at all. And so I just made everything cozy, and I like put all like the twinkly lights on in the living room, and I would have made a fire, but it was like kind of too warm outside at that point. And so I put on like this fireplace ambiance on the TV, and like just made everything in the living room very serene. And like we all were on that couch together, and of course Jenks spent most of the night having like series of like kind of aftershocks. Bear Bear was pretty calm. Like, I'm really pleased to say that she had a really good last night. And at one point, when Mr. Jenks was like, had fallen asleep and was looking kind of peaceful, I had this like pint of like Mediterranean mint Talenti gelato. Like, I had bought it randomly. Actually, I haven't bought ice cream in actually a really long time, but like my birthday's coming up, and like I had my cousins coming in, and it was on sale. It was like a very pragmatic purchase. I put it in the back of my freezer. I was like, maybe this will be fun to have for my birthday or just some other time. And I was like, I think this is the time. And so I took it out, and I was like, I sat there and I ate straight from the container, and use the lid of the ice cream and set it in front of Bear, and I would just scoop. I would put scoops in the lid for her, and she just had the time of her life eating Mediterranean mint ice cream. And like, of course, I don't feed my dogs ice cream, especially ice cream with little chocolate chips in it. But for Bear's last several hours, and the fact that the one thing that she loved doing was eating, and I couldn't think of a softer food to give her that would please her, she just had a ball eating that Mediterranean mint ice cream. And so she and I just had our own little ritual right there on the couch, and I would eat the Talenti Mediterranean mint, and I'd fill her little cap up when it ran out, and she would just be like in hog heaven, and like her whiskers and her lips were just covered in green ice cream, and she loved it. So that was a really special thing that I got to do. And of course, I was like, seeing, the hard thing about those moments is you think, you second guess the rational decision that you had made in a perfectly rational state of mind earlier. And I think, well, why am I saying goodbye to Bear now? Look at her. She's fine. She's happy. And that was really something I had to fight, like to not second guess the authority, the decision that was made from a place of authority that I knew had to be made. And to take this moment where she was happy as like a good thing for that reason, instead of getting caught in a backtracking place. And so I of course was like then trying to rationalize out. I'm like, okay, look how happy she is. And then I'm like, and look at Jenks. He's sleeping really well. And I thought, well, I have till 7 a.m. to cancel. If I need to cancel, I'll cancel. Because of course I'm like in these final hours, and like I don't want to say goodbye to both of my dogs. So the universe also has another way of like helping you along. And so as it turns out, 1 hour before that sort of deadline to confirm or cancel, Mr. Jinx had another seizure at 6 a.m. And this one was just like, as terrible as it sounds, you know, I'm like, okay, well, we have the third seizure in like 30 hours. And this one was just like, I mean, he was even like more out of it after this one. It was clearly like the seizures were becoming more frequent. And he was telling me like he it was his time. And you know I I'm I'm not glad he had another seizure, but I at least got that confirmation. And I just did what I did after all the other seizures, and like held him and like kept him comfortable and kept calm. And I just spent a lot of time talking to him for those last several hours, like holding his face and telling him it was going to be okay for him, that mama had someone coming to help him. And Bear meanwhile, she actually gave me a really good sense of peace, because she had some of the best sleep on the couch. Despite her resistance the night before, she just slept really, really cozily those last few hours before we had to get up. And so I got up at 8 after just sort of like resting my eyes for a little bit, really, and really made a ritual out of those last 2 hours. And those rituals that got me through for myself this last year, I tapped right into that for their last 2 hours. And they each got a Jimmy Dean egg bite breakfast, and like they both ate it all up. And then that seemed to be all Jinx wanted. He was really tired from the seizure a few hours earlier. And I gave Bear like some hamburger patty that was still in the fridge, and like I took her to go to the bathroom like a couple times, and we just stood out there, and I savored the ritual of like harnessing her up, which of course the guilt rushes in because of all the times it felt like such a chore. The reality is, it was a lot of work. It took up most of my life force day to day. But those last few times, man, I really savored harnessing her up and like standing outside with her and watching her sniff the air and leading her around. And so I just wanted to share this with you all in case the nature of this channel, sometimes it's easy the further along I get and I'm on the other side of this camera chopping up my vegetables, and it might be easy to think, well, that's easy for her to say. Like she's like on a roll. Like she gets further and further from like her fiance leaving her, and like like the more time that passes, of course it's easy for her to chop these vegetables and pull it together, and that would be fair to look at it that way. But um, one thing about me is that I have um, a bend towards making things that actually are really hard for me look easy, because it's part of like I almost see it as like I'm trying to make it okay for everyone else in a way. And like if I can convince myself that it's easy, like I'm more likely to do it. So it's my own coping mechanism, but like again, it's a fine line between that and masking. So I chopped these carrots here today because honestly, I'm at a state of despair that I didn't think was possible to feel more despair than I did a year ago. And it is possible, because the thing about the despair of last year is it was offset with a lot of anger, righteous anger, actually. And if I have him to thank for anything, it was um, becoming so completely deplorable in those final months, especially, and at the very end, and leaving with such a grand, horrible exit that the anger was a really helpful offset for the grief, for like the love that had nowhere to go, which is what we often call grief. Well, here, um, it is a grief that I don't have any anger to offset it with. So if you are going through it, if you've lost something or someone or pets, I've actually heard a lot of news recently, just through friends, of a lot of people that are saying goodbye to pets recently, and these transits are very like unsparing, I have to say. And so I imagine a lot of you out there who are suffering, maybe you're keeping it to yourself. And if I have one act of service to give for this, is I'm going to share it with you so that maybe you will share it with someone else, and then maybe someone else who's experiencing something feels less alone. So I hope that that's what you take this video as, because it is the only reason that I made it, and to have it be the sort of last expression of love for these two dogs. And I hope you take care of yourselves. And I'm going to focus for the next while leading up to my birthday, especially, of transmuting this pain, not ignoring it, not pretending like I'm not devastated. And I'm going to work as hard as I've ever worked to carry that love, to not detach from it, and to turn it into something beautiful, and to something maybe that can help whoever else needs it. And I hope that that's you. Or if it's not you, if you know someone that is going through it, you can share this with them as some sort of comfort, if it can add some. So I'll check in sometime. I might end up checking in from somewhere remote, because I do think I need to go somewhere for a little bit. But I'm going to keep it going on this channel, because every video that I make after this will be easier. And I hope to have something to show for how I've used this grief to propel me. Until next time.